Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into the absolute ultimate alternate history. It is one of the most fascinating what-if scenarios imaginable. So what if that massive, 6-mile wide asteroid that famously wiped out the dinosaurs just completely missed Earth? Imagine it just sailing right past us, disappearing into the cold, dark void of space. It's a tiny, simple change in trajectory, right? Just a minor cosmic miss, but it literally alters absolutely everything we know about our planet's history. And you know what's truly mind-bending about this whole scenario? Are the sheer cosmic odds involved. Modern research actually suggests that the impact was this catastrophic bullseye, specifically because it hit the shallow, incredibly sulfur-rich waters of the Yucatan Peninsula. That's what vaporized into a global sun-blocking winter. Get this, if that asteroid had arrived just 30 seconds earlier or 30 seconds later, the Earth's rotation would have placed deep, open ocean in its crosshairs instead. Now, an ocean impact might have caused some massive tsunamis, sure, but it likely wouldn't have choked the atmosphere with enough global debris to cause a mass extinction. 30 seconds. That is the razor-thin margin between a complete reset of terrestrial life and a world where that terrifying asteroid is just a really spectacular shooting star in the prehistoric sky.
So, that brings us to a massive, kind of heavy philosophical question. Would humans even exist today? Take a second to really think about the sheer weight of that idea. We so often just assume our place at the top of the food chain was inevitable, right? That our remarkable intelligence and the fact that we dominate the globe were just, the destined endpoints of evolution. We view the rise of humanity as a total given. But looking at the science behind this alternate timeline reveals a very different, deeply humbling truth. And really, this explainer is designed to reveal just how incredibly fragile our origin story actually is. The universe doesn't have some built-in preference for large brains or bipedal apes. Evolution is entirely driven by environment and opportunity. So if that giant space rock doesn't hit the Earth, if the apocalyptic fire and ice never arrive to basically clear the board, does our chapter of the evolutionary story ever even begin?
Let's anchor ourselves in the timeline for a minute to really understand the world we're stepping into here. 66 million years ago. That is the exact moment Earth's history was permanently altered. But let's paint a picture of what the planet actually looked like right before that happened. It wasn't some barren wasteland just waiting around to be conquered. The late Cretaceous period was this lush, humid, wildly vibrant greenhouse. We're talking dense forests of towering conifers, ferns, and early flowering plants covering continents that were just kind of slowly drifting into their modern positions. The air was thick, it was filled with buzzing insects, and these massive flying reptiles. Now, in our timeline, we know the impact caused a global catastrophe, bringing the reign of the dinosaurs to a super fiery, violent end. But in our scenario today, we're erasing that impact. No crash, no mega tsunamis, no giant ash cloud blocking out the sun for decades, no global winter, just another sunny day in a vibrant, prehistoric paradise that keeps right on humming. Without that cataclysmic reset button being pressed, the Earth remains a world still completely wild. Dinosaurs would have simply continued to dominate the planet, exactly as they had been doing incredibly successfully for over 150 million years before that. To really wrap our heads around what this means, we have to look at this concept of ecological niches. In biology, evolutionary innovation usually requires a vacuum. A species can really only evolve into a new role, like, say, a large apex predator or a massive grazing herbivore, if that biological real estate is actually vacant. Well, here's the problem. Dinosaurs had perfectly adapted to almost every single macro environment on the globe. They were this spectacularly diverse group of animals, and they occupied literally every available large animal niche on land. Because they had every major ecological role completely locked down, there was simply zero biological room for any other class of animals to move up in the world. They just maintained this absolute, unbreakable grip on the top of the global food chain. And this unbroken dominance translates into a beautifully terrifying planetary ecosystem. We'd have giant predators like the Tyrannosaurus rex, or, whatever highly advanced apex predators eventually evolved from them, still absolutely ruling the forests. Just picture the sheer terror of trying to navigate a dense woodland with a highly intelligent bus-sized predator lurking between the trees. Out in the open, enormous plant eaters like Triceratops or heavily armored tanks like Ankylosaurus would just continue to roam the vast plains in these massive, ground-shaking herds. It's basically the ultimate biological gridlock. Think of it like a prehistoric traffic jam of muscle, teeth, and armor, where absolutely nobody else gets a turn to drive. We are talking about an ongoing, uninterrupted reign of multi-ton creatures that completely monopolize the planet's resources. They're eating the vast majority of the vegetation and leaving virtually no room for anything else to thrive on a macro scale. All of this perfectly illustrates a profound biological butterfly effect. While all these reptilian giants are stomping around, dominating the landscape, what exactly is happening to the ancestors of humans? Well, our ancestors were small mammals, just tiny, scurrying little creatures trying to eke out a living in the underbrush. Now, here's a striking historical fact that I feel like often gets overlooked. Mammals had actually already been coexisting with dinosaurs for over 100 million years by the time the asteroid hit. They weren't some brand new invention just waiting in the wings. They were already there, but they were completely trapped. Because the dinosaurs totally owned the daytime and all the large animal niches, early mammals were forced to remain small, mostly nocturnal, and just constantly on the run. For 100 million years, they never evolved larger than the size of a modern badger. Because think about it, stepping out of the shadows and trying to grow larger meant instant death. They were permanently pinned down at the very bottom of the ecological hierarchy by sheer force and size. Which brings us to this incredibly impactful quote directly from our source material. Small mammals might never have had the chance to evolve into intelligent beings. Without the dinosaurs suddenly disappearing, the evolutionary runway for human ancestors is just totally blocked. And this really comes down to the brutal biological cost of intelligence. Developing a massive, highly complex brain consumes a staggering amount of a body's daily calories. It also requires these long, highly vulnerable periods of childhood development where the offspring are just completely helpless. In a high-threat environment where your species is at the absolute bottom of the food chain, investing precious biological energy into a massive brain instead of, say, fast legs, sharp claws, or camouflage, that's an evolutionary dead end. If your entire existence is spent constantly hiding and scurrying just to avoid becoming a quick snack for a juvenile T-Rex, your species simply does not have the luxury, the calories, or the biological safety required to eventually evolve into a creature that builds spaceships. Think about the sprawling cities, the interconnected highways, the intricate smartphones that completely define our modern reality. They sit in stark, unbelievable contrast to a world where daily survival depends entirely on scurrying through the dirt to avoid a multi-ton predator. It highlights a deeply, deeply humbling scientific truth. The entirety of the human experience, the Renaissance, the moon landing, the creation of the internet, the art, the music, the whole shebang of civilization, literally none of it is the result of inevitable destiny. It is the direct result of a highly specific planetary clearance event. We owe our entire modern existence, every single hallmark of human civilization, to the fact that a giant rock hit the Earth exactly when and where it did. It wiped the dominant players off the board, and finally, gave those small, badger-sized mammals in the underbrush the biological breathing room to stand up, grow larger, and actually look at the stars. So ultimately, without that fateful asteroid, the slate wouldn't have been wiped clean for us to write our own story into the history of the planet. Human civilization and humanity itself might never have existed at all. We are, quite literally, the beneficiaries of the luckiest strike in planetary history. Knowing that our entire reality rests on the 30-second cosmic timing difference leaves us staring at a thrilling, terrifying, and just endlessly fascinating scenario to ponder. We've explored what that alternate Earth would look like through this explainer, an untamed greenhouse still ruled by the most magnificent beasts to ever walk the land. So, knowing what you know now about the incredible fragility of our place in the universe, would you want to live in a world ruled by dinosaurs?